And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, my name is Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions trading card game. I think we'll just call it Champions for short right now. This is a collectible card game, or trading card game as they're known, where you can buy starter decks. So there's several starter decks that come with this, and you can buy booster packs and open up these booster packs and build your own decks and play against someone else. Of course, the most famous of these types of games is Magic the Gathering. Now, this one here is based on the very popular Games Workshop brand Warhammer Age of Sigmar, their fantasy tabletop game. So obviously, I guess if you like that theming, you're going to come into this with some expectations. If you've never played that theming, basically, it's a bunch of orcs and humans and evil people all fighting each other for whatever reason. In this game, you are trying to make your opponent's life go down to 0 by the usage of 4 champions and the little armies that they bring to the table. Let me show you. So to play this game, you're going to need some sort of deck. There are various decks that you can just straight up buy. We got the Order deck and the Death deck and the Chaos deck. And here in front of you, I'm showing off the Destruction deck, or the Orcs. When you have a deck and you can build your own decks, the rules for that are online, which I thought was a little odd that they didn't include the rules for building a deck in the boxes themselves. But whatever. You're going to get champions. Now, here's some examples of some champions. Each of these champions is going to have a certain kind of a point cost here, the green number, but the red number is health points. You are basically starting with a life point total of 30 plus the health points here. So you'll notice that here is 2 minus 1 plus 1 minus 1, so this would be 31. These orcs here is 1 plus 2 minus 1 plus 1, so my life total here starts at 33. You're then going to have a deck of cards that is going to be based around these different characters, and the cards, as you'll notice, have red and blue borders to them, or sometimes gray borders, and that's going to determine who can use each of the cards. Some cards will be split, they can be used by either. Some of these champions can use red or blue cards. There's also treasures that you're going to have. You get to pick 4 treasures for your deck. However, at the beginning of the game, you're going to shuffle these treasures and place them face down. You're going to take turns placing out your 4 champions. The first player puts out 1, then the opponent puts out 2, then you put out your 2, and then they put, so on, and you just go back and forth putting out your heroes. And they're going to have a mat that's facing this mat where you're going to have your 4 champions facing each other in lanes. But the champions themselves aren't going to die over the course of this game. They're just going to be attacking the other person's like health point or army strength as a general. You're trying to get the other person to go, for example, my opponent would try to make me go from 33 to 0. So let's take a look at how that works. There's a lot of the cards in this game that are rotating cards. You'll notice that because there's numbers in each corner. And at the beginning of your turn, after you do any cards that say at the start of your turn do that, you're going to rotate your cards and then update the state of these cards. So here, for example, I'll rotate this one and gain that much health as you rotate these. So this one's going to just slowly increase my health. This one's going to do damage to my opponent, but it's only going to rotate 3 times. Once it gets to the X, it's gone. This will do damage to your opponent. If this unit has support 2, the damage is done with rend, and rend is one of the different keywords in this game. And happily, each of the factions come with their own little keyword card. So rend here, damage done with rend ignores damage reducing effects. So rend is kind of like unstoppable. And so a lot of the cards will be rotated. Now some cards, these are regular smooth rotation cards, they're circles. Some cards have a clunky rotation thing, and that means they will only rotate if a specific thing happens to them. So at the beginning of your turn, you'll rotate any cards that you have out there. Then players have 2 actions that they can take. Now these actions are pretty much all going to be the same. You can play a card from your hand. And remember, you got to match the colors and things as you're playing the cards. So maybe I want to play this Gore Choppa Brute here, and he's a unit and he's red, so I'm going to place this unit here in front of the Mega Boss on Maul Crusher. Now there can only be one card in each of these action slots. You got to think carefully where you place these cards. A lot of time these cards are going to specifically affect possibly the card directly in front of them, or they'll affect all your cards in the back line. So they're going to have different effects on them, and if they do, like this could be any of your opponent's champions, you'll play these. This just basically shows you when you play the card, where it does, and what kind of damage it's going to do. Sometimes there's a heroic act on a character. There's none here currently, but some of the champions will have like a heroic act on them, and that is another action that you can take. You can also just pass, and that's basically what you can do on your turn. You then will draw a card for each action you didn't take. So you can take no actions and just draw 2 cards, or you can take 1 action and draw 1 card, and then your turn ends, and you're just going to keep going back and forth. That is literally the whole game. Now, there's a couple things kind of important thing. I mentioned that these heroes here are going to rotate when different things happen based on, what's on the card. So the heroes here, this is called the clunky rotation, and this means when they deploy a unit in front of them, I'll rotate. When I deploy an orc unit, they'll rotate, and when you attack, and so when you completely rotate the character, you meet all 4 of these requirements here. You then get to reveal whatever the treasure is here. Now, treasures are awesome. You can see this one here will do 3 damage to my opponent 3 times in a row. It's just a blessing. Boom, boom, boom. That's 9 damage to my opponent. This one here does 5 damage to the opponent, and rotate highlighted units to their final corner. Smash and bash. So sometimes you have these really cool spells that when you rotate them to the final corner, they're going to do a lot. This gain 4 health, draw 2 cards. It's a pretty cool blessing. Here, draw 3 cards face up. Any units drawn can be deployed on the highlighted champions. So blessing cards are great. Now, you don't know exactly where they are, but you're trying to move these guys, and each one of them will be different. Like this guy's going to need to play some spells. He needs to heal somebody to be able to get them out. And these guys will also have special abilities on them sometimes. Or sometimes, like for example, this guy here, he has no special ability. Of course, he's only 1 point, and so you're probably putting him in with a really cool, bigger champion. So that's kind of the basis of the game. Before we get to my final opinions and stuff, let's take a look at some of the cards that come with this game. Now, there is a digital aspect to the game where you'll be able to scan your cards and add them, and here we got a booster card where you can just do things, but like here, this champion can deploy beast units, this guy here. Here he does damage, every time he rotates, he does damage to your opponent, and then the guy right across from him can't deploy units while this guy's in play. Here's a Grot boss who has a heroic act. Remember, that's one of the actions you can do on your turn. He can only be used if this champion controls a unit with support 2, and he just does 2 damage to your opponent. So there's all sorts of different cards in this deck. I'm just going to go through these real quick. These are some cards that I got from a booster pack, so some of these cards might be rare, some might not. Again, you'll notice these things on the outside. There's also some foil cards that will allow people to scan them and add them to their collection online. And I have not messed with the digital aspect of this game at all, just played the physical one. But just wanted to show you some of the cards that you can see that you'll get as you play this game, different factions and so forth. So we have this mat here. This comes with the game. I'm sure there's going to be nicer play mats that people can buy. The rules, they explain, basically what all the symbology means, especially for rotating your heroes. It explains rotation. The rules are really short and simple. I do wish, like I said, that they had deck building rules in here. These are quick rules. I'm surprised there wasn't more online. I personally am still not a fan of rule books that are one big folded sheet of paper, especially since they could have put a small booklet in these boxes, but what have you. I really do like these cards that come with the specific deck that show you, this is what all these terms mean. That's a really nice thing. More card games should have these type of reference cards. It just means I don't have to look through the rules. I can just look here and he's explain it. The cards themselves are of good quality. I am, however, not a big fan of the graphic design at all. I think it's too dark. The picture here seems kind of obscured. The pictures are fine, right? But they seem obscured by this outside. Now, I know that it's because They want to make these things digitally done. But when I'm looking, when I see all these cards out here, I can't really tell them apart. They all look the same. To me, the graphic design of this game looks kind of like it came from the 90s. I mean, this is obviously a very subjective thing, but just not totally impressed with how the game looks. When I look at my character's opponents and look at all their stuff, none of it strikes me. None of it looks, it just looks like a big, everything's the samey. That would be my biggest complaint about the graphic design of this game. Other than that, it's kind of the typical stuff you see with every collectible card game. So I'm going to start out by saying I like the game. And I want to point that out because there's a few things I want to mention. I'm not a huge fan of trading card games, mostly because that model itself is not as exciting for me. I don't mind it, like I don't dislike the model per se, but I don't want to go down chasing cards all the time for these games. So I'm kind of curious, how well do the starting decks play against each other? And it seems like they play against each other well. I've heard tale that the Orc one seems to be the best of the 4 decks. I won with it when I played with it a couple times, and you can see one of those plays online. I played against Sam, and I'm pretty sure I won with the Orc deck. But, you know, the starter decks seem to work fine. And so that's kind of the aspect I'm going. I think that the deck building aspect is interesting, and that the fact that there's a digital game is also interesting. But I want to just talk about it from a board game perspective, as in, hey, I want to buy a couple starter packs, and how well does this play? And the answer is, it plays pretty well. Now, this is an evolution on another trading card game, the Lightseekers game, which I thought was pretty good, but I think I like this one better. I like the Lightseekers theming better. It's light and cheerful and bright and woohoo. And this one's dark and grim. I've never been a big Warhammer theming fan, especially, like I said, the cards to me look dark and grim, and I kind of just wish the game looked nicer for me. And also the fact that there's death, chaos, destruction, and then one order deck. It's like, do you want to be bad, 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 or kind of good? I wish there was more good guy decks, but I'm sure maybe that will come in the future. The game concept is going to be a little weird because you have these 4 champions out there and they're sending things, but your champions never really fight each other. They kind of do, but you're fighting a big health point total. They're taking these big army things and abstracting it down. Your health point is like to show that troops die and fight on the battlefield and all. But essentially it comes down to the same thing as Magic the Gathering, you know, where you have your opponent has a life total and you're knocking it down. And sure, it's modified, it's 30 here, or 33, or 32, or 29, depending on, you know, the forces you put in your army, but that's not that interesting to me thematically wise. I am interested in the cards and the whole aspect of rotating your heroes and getting these treasures out. That's really cool. It's really fun to like try to play cards in the right order and try to do things to get your champion to open up that treasure and like, ooh, which of my 4 treasures is it? And then when you turn over the treasure, you're like, oh yes. Because I mean, hopefully you put 4 really good treasures in your deck, right? But that to use that treasure then just feels like, wow, you know, you're out in a battlefield, you're getting beat down, and suddenly you're like, boom, blow up or something. Will this have a lot of legs outside people who are not big Games Workshop fans? Honestly, I don't think so. Because I think the theme, if you're not into the theme, I don't know that the gameplay is going to drag people in. I like it, like I said, I think it's fun. But I don't have any like strong desire to go and get more and more decks and more decks. You know, sometimes I play a collectible card game. I was like, ooh, what else is there? Here, I'm interested in playing more decks. And come on, I want a Skaven deck. But it's more about the theme, I think, than maybe the game. Now, the game, again, is really interesting. What 4 champions are going to pick? How are you going to build that deck around those champions? How are you going to put things out there? And it's light and fast. We're talking 25, 30 minutes to play against it. And it offers pretty good strategic choices. I'm a big fan of that. I like the fact the rotating card aspect is unique, other than Lightseekers, unique to this. And that's something different than, hey, just put a bunch of people out, tap them, attack your opponents. And the lane-itch area of this, as opposed to Lightseekers, I think makes this a better game. It's a more heavy game. There seems to be more strategy and depth to this. Again, I like it. I don't know that I personally will be playing much more of it in the future because, again, I don't really follow trading card games that much, and I don't want to keep up with them and keep all the things, but there's a lot of good to say about this game. There is the digital aspect to it. It's not that hard to build decks and all. You get those 4 champions, 4 treasures, and build the deck around that. And there's a lot of variety amongst the different cards, and there's a lot of back and forth in the game. I hit you, you hit me, I heal, you hit me. We go back and forth, and with the keyword cards keep things from getting too complex. This is a game that a lot of people could jump into. You say, I haven't played many or any collectible card games before. Well, this one you can probably get into fairly easily. I did not find the rules to be overwhelming at all. You could jump in and start playing right away. And so that's definitely an advantage to it also. So that's Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions, the trading card game. I don't know that it's for everybody, but it is a nice solid entry into this genre, which is a very dangerous genre because trading card games don't last very long, but this one might have a shot at it. Dice Tower Judgment approved!